So let's go ahead and talk about some facts that I think are really interesting. The first is every day, about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are generated. And it is more accelerated with the growth of Internet of Things data or IoT data. Now, when it comes to, okay, a couple questions. Yes. Yeah, so I'll leave it up to Quickstart to answer that. I believe so. The presentation should be available. I don't know how, but I'll leave it up to the moderator. And is this the webinar for boot camps? Yes, that would be correct. We'll talk about that as well, at least part of it anyways. Okay, so I hope that answered your question. And we'll be talking more about these sections here in a second. Now, TensorFlow has a research cloud, and this program enables researchers to apply for access to a free cluster, basically, of 1,000 TPUs. So a TPU is a TensorFlow processing unit, and I'll show you how that works here in a few minutes. As far as actionable insights, this is where you, as like a data analyst, when you get done with your boot camp and you get done with your training, you start looking for work. This is probably the first step for a lot of you, to go out to a role where you can look at data and provide insight to your company. The goal is to provide value, and I'll talk about how we could do that. Data scientists, they really go and do a lot of different things, but mainly it's about understanding, stabilizing the data, and understanding the relationships between the data and bottlenecks. One of the challenges when you have all of this data coming from all of these different sources is trying to understand, how do we sort it out? How do we put in a data lake and actually make it work? And when it's in the data lake, we have to understand too that there's different types of data. There's basically data that is structured, and there's data that's not structured. When it comes to hurdles, we have AI and ML. Now, one of the challenges with AI and machine learning is that the expectations, honestly, I think have been bigger than reality. However, it's still an area that has significant demand. So this is an area, if you really like training models, you like quantitative analysis, you like to program, this could be your area to a nice career. Now, as far as options, we'll talk more about the boot camps at the end. But basically, if you're not familiar with Quickstart, basically Quickstart is a global IT training company. They have a lot of different boot camps. And one area that we focus on is, of course, data science and data analysis. Now, there's, of course, different boot camp options. I'll cover that here at the end. But they partner with a lot of different universities. So not only does Quickstart work with the corporate world, they also work with the educational world as well. Let's talk about our first subject, and that is data science versus data analysis versus machine learning versus automated intelligence. So it's really important to understand where this sort of plays in, because generally, data science is at the top. In other words, everything falls under data science. And then when it comes to data analysis, we're really going to be using AI and machine learning as part of this. And we want to be aware too, when we're looking at data, it's really about understanding how it's concentrated. How do we generate, how do we generate insight from that data? How can we provide basically actionable results for our company, for our customer? Data science is more of a concept that is used to tackle big data, and those areas include data cleansing, preparation, analysis, of which is used to use predictive tools to provide value. Now, data analysis is a subset of, and I'm saying this for a few reasons, a few times, because I want to make sure we get this. So think of data analysis sort of similar to, for example, if you work in cloud computing, well, just because you work in cloud computing doesn't mean that you work with AWS or you work with Google. Maybe you work with another vendor and that's a totally different specialization. Even though you know sort of some of the commonality areas, you may not know how to deploy a resource in another cloud. Well, we want to think of data analysis similarly to that. It's a subset. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think data analysis is really the gateway for a lot of people to get into data science. Now, AI is really a subset of machine learning. So we want to understand models. We want to understand, for example, how to train our predictive tools that we may be using. And it all just comes down to understanding what the right facets are to consider. So we'll talk more about that. So data analysis, AI, and machine learning are all subsets or specializations of data science. So I hope that is made pretty clear. All right, so let's see the comments and questions. And I'll check it fairly routinely. Okay, let's see. Questions. Okay, so you're a physician with limited computer knowledge, but I'm interested in electronic health records. Okay, well, that's a really good question. If you're a doctor already, you probably have good math skills and you probably have good reading skills. And I'm assuming that you're able to look at data and, you know, visualize it as well. So you really should have a good start. Now, the question is limited computer knowledge. So this is, again, probably more of a, I wouldn't call it a big jump for you, but there's going to be some things to learn, no question about it. And really, it's not so much the computer, the IT stuff that's really difficult. It's really understanding how to use the tools to really produce value. And when I go through some of the tools, maybe it'll help you figure out basically where you can go with it. It's hard for me to really answer this question just, you know, concretely, just because everyone has different experiences, will take a different road in life. But clearly you have the skills to do very well, but which direction you could go is, you know, sort of something, maybe a consultation would be better with someone in the training area, I think. But I have full faith you will do excellent if that is your skill set already. Okay. All right, so I hope this again is really helpful so far. So let's go ahead and talk about some more details. All right, machine learning is really defined as the practice of using algorithms. Now, what is an algorithm? Basically, an algorithm is something that we're going to want to use that is sort of multifold. So let me go and I'm going to show you actually let me hold off on that. But basically think of an algorithm as more of a data structure. And I'll talk about, it's easier to show you in the Google demo than to sort of talk about it verbally. But basically, algorithms basically are a data structure. And as part of that, what we want to think about is it's really a set of steps to complete a task. But data structure is really different in the sense that we're going to store data and then we can manipulate that data. So the algorithm is really more or less used, you know, as a way to accomplish a task. And a data structure is for storing the data essentially in whatever structure. It could be a structured or unstructured, like rows and tables or likes or whatever the data service you may be using. Okay, so machine learning is really what? It's a practice of algorithms to extract data. We want to learn from it. And the main thing is nowadays, and here is really where, for example, a lot of the financial companies hire a lot of AI and machine learning folks because for them, trying to get a model that works to make them money, they pay a lot of money to do that. So a lot of these roles are going to be based in the big cities as well, generally. But basically, if you could go in and look at data and look at how you could manipulate the data, and when I say manipulate, I'm sort of saying, you know, look at it and change it so that you could derive value from it in whatever manner is appropriate, and then put together what's called a forecast. That's like a model, basically, like, for example, with this COVID-19 thingamajig, as I call it. They have this, they always say the model, right? Basically, they're saying that they use basically machine learning and AI to sort of figure out how many deaths would occur on a daily basis and where. That's sort of what they did. And I'm going to actually reference that data here shortly as part of a demo. So I think that's sort of cool. Now, when it comes to data science, we want to talk about, again, it's a broader term. It's not just algorithms and statistics, but it's the whole processing method from start to finish. When the user logs in and makes a purchase, that data science process has already started. On the other hand, the machine learning process, for example, doesn't really start until the questions are asked against it to figure out what time of day is better, or what do you think will happen if we shut down the economy, how many people would be unemployed? That's where they're getting all these numbers from. They're using these models and algorithms, so just be aware of that.